Hello and welcome to the new green wall. Welcome to the office hours, ladies and gentlemen. Let me move my camera around a little bit more. There we go. I cannot do that because my entire wall is green behind me. I have so much space now. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. How you guys doing? Before we get started, as is tradition, I will show you my latest creation. Thank you, Utho Riley, by the way, for those musical songs. Exclamation point Utho in chat if you guys want to know. He does fantastic work, and he does a lot of that stuff that lets you use it for free if you're a content creator. So please do go check him out and go spread the word for him. He's a good dude. What we're listening to right now is Pretzel Rocks, which is another good service. If you're tired or if you're afraid of being DMCA'd and you're a Twitch streamer or something else like that, Pretzel Rocks pays its creators money license to let streamers do this. So all of my music is never going to get DMCA'd because it's all been paid through by Pretzel Rocks, and I actually pay for Pretzel Rocks. It's a little subscription fee for it, but I get all this music for free. So, all right. So I know I showed this off last time, but last time it wasn't completely done. Now it is completely done. You can see the green is a little off still. I still gotta kind of dial in the green screen a little bit better. The tracks are on it. Pretty happy with it. Even did a little bit of highlighting. You can see that. Looks nice. All right. All right. Whew. A basilisk, indeed, yeah. What do I think of the crab tank? Well, let me try to fix something real quick. There we go. It's a little better. Yeah, it's better. Which crab tank? Like you're talking about in the in that screenshot? That's probably if it's a crab thing, then it's probably just the Grey Cat mining ship, the mining drone. How many hours of painting was that? About 2 or 3 hours, I think. So the thing about the painting isn't necessarily the hours it took to paint it. It's more of the hours it took to dry. Because, like, I painted it pretty quickly, and then I had to go back and then spot paint the spots that I missed and kind of touch it up a little bit. And then I did a highlight. A lot of times I use, like, a shader. So, the shade paint, which then will, I have to wait for that to dry before I can use it again. It kind of brings out all of the details. And then with tanks, I have to wait, and I have to do the tracks. I paint the tracks, then I shade them, and then I glue them on. So I have to wait for all that to dry. I do that separately because it looks better, so. PTU is out for everybody. God damn it. We'll play tomorrow. I'd play it because I have access to first wave PTU. Oh, it's PTU for 311, isn't it? Yes, feed blood for the blood god, money for the rich Brits. No ships yet, yeah. All right, I'll go download the latest update. Do a bit of a sneak preview for y'all. So we'll see the IAE lobby, then come back and talk. Mirago's still a senator. I don't know what you guys say. F's in the chat for Mira. I guess this is the first time. Is this the first time? Yes, this is the first time we've talked. If you haven't heard the word, Mirago has, that Leilani Addison is officially the Imperator of the UEE. She's the next Imperator of the UEE. So, yeah, Mirago is not. I voted for Mirago, but she didn't win. She actually didn't get a lot of votes at all. But as I theorized, because Leilani was the meme ab candidate, she got the most. Seg Ironside, thank you so much for that sub, my man. Shots and cheers in chat, guys. Shots and cheers. Hey there, little Spike. How you doing, buddy? Or Speaky. Hey, Master Previous. I didn't see that. I'm checking everything else. You voted for Costigan? It's not a bad choice. I just love the meme that a lot of people are like, yay! And now we're gonna get AI blades faster because Leilani Anderson is the Imperator. No, you're not. No, it doesn't mean you get exploration gameplay. It doesn't mean you get anything faster. What it does is flavor the gameplay you get. So it might add missions or might add events where Leilani's trying to negotiate peace with the Vanduul and ends up, getting an entire UEE fleet destroyed. Or it might end up where now that there's going to be AI research, the AI research teams are going to have going to be officially licensed AI research teams where the AI goes rogue and tries to kill everybody. Like that kind of thing. You're not going to see anything major. It will have an ripple effect down the line in terms of what happens, but you won't get gameplay specifically because of it. You'll get mission gameplay that will change because of that factor. It's like, for instance, topically, electing a new president of the United States or a new chancellor or a new prime minister doesn't mean that you suddenly get new things or that the entire government changes. It just means that the direction of that government will now be chosen differently and it will take some time for that to implement. Same kind of thing. Leilani Anderson is not going to give you gameplay right away. Exactly. She's not going to defund the synth world, that's for sure. Hey, Blue Raven, how you doing? It's not illegal anymore, old man. It's going to be legal. I do think that it'll probably make things like it'll increase the likelihood of having dealing with AI missions on Microtech, because Microtech's got the perfect climate and the perfect background for being a tech planet. That you'd have a remote outpost now using government funding to fund its AI research. And shit's now going to go wrong and you're going to have to go down and investigate. And the clone thing, people are shitting on that too hard. I was going to do a video on it, but all of the drive got put out of my sails. But the way that the reality is, and let's go over this real quickly. So I do want to educate a little bit of you guys on how cloning works. I had conversations with the guy who does the Xi'an every day about this. There are some things that CIG said which are just factually incorrect, but that's typical of CIG. CIG says a lot of things which seem like they'd work, but when you actually deep dive into it, it doesn't. Like the idea that black holes suck. Black holes don't suck. They don't suck in everything. It's just things that move into it creates orbits. It doesn't pull things in, kind of like that. Like the idea that you could get shot in the leg and then your clone gets brought back and has a scar on the leg doesn't make any sense because there's no genetic memory like that. However, they could still do something cool with that. So first off, the thing you have to understand about two things you have to really understand about how DNA works IRL. DNA is not perfect, and DNA has errors in the code altogether. In fact, you are here today because of the errors in DNA code. A lot of times when you have the errors in DNA code, it creates mutations, and those mutations can lead to things like physical differences, things like red hair, different eye colors, different skin pigments. These mutations take place because of errors in code. When your cells divide, cells copy and paste DNA strands between one another, but it's not a perfect system. So there's sometimes some things get screwed up and mixed around, which is called a mutation. And when you have too many of these error codes built up, it can cause major diseases. In fact, most organ failures because of things like aging happens because of these buildup of these DNA errors. Eventually, basically your body is filled with cells with bad DNA or with wrong DNA. Sometimes these cells can be culled with by kill switches that are built into cells. But when those malicious cells, DNA in cells, goes rampant, that's called cancer. So, so as a result, in real life, human beings' bodies cannot survive forever. It's impossible for a human being physically to survive forever. We have an outer expiration date currently of our bodies, and our body's outer expiration date, as of current research, is between 150 and 200 years without cybernetic augmentation. This is also very brand new research, which has just started in the last maybe 3 decades. And a lot of it is just theory work. So, and the information that I got from this is from an older documentary, which could easily have changed, and older sources, which could easily have changed in the last 10 years. So it may have increased or decreased over time. So the idea that, so you have to understand that DNA errors happen, and you could easily hand wave a lot of the faults, like having to get a new cybernetic arm from your new clone, because the errors in the DNA are just too built up and things get weird. Tissue also is really hard to store. We currently have a hard time keeping tissue preserved for a very long time. And even if you do preserve it, it can cause lots of weird shit to happen inside of it. Plus, you also have things like tissue can get, someone touches something without a glove. Now suddenly there's a tissue transfer. So now instead of a clone, you're getting some sort of weird mix of the person who touched it and your DNA. There's also your tissue breaks down. It's hard to preserve it. Even with better technology, these kind of things still happen. So it's easy to hand wave a lot of these things, like human beings can't live forever. Your bodies will eventually give out, and your clones' bodies will eventually give out anyways. And in the verse, cloning is a thing. Cloning has been a thing for at least some time. It's always been the way that you replace limbs or eyes or body parts is by cloned body parts. However, fully cloned humans haven't worked in lore. They work, but they're also incredibly unstable. They're very prone to diseases. And that's as of the last lore about it. That's basically all they've said about it. But genetics have been a thing for a while. Genetic manipulation is a big thing in the UEE. And I've said it many times, is that there's actually kind of a counter push against perfect genetics by people physically changing their appearance, specifically to look uglier or to look a little more lopsided, because it makes them stand out more rather than the perfectly symmetrical face and that kind of stuff. So, there's already a bit of a lore in there for it. Now there would have to be some changes that CIG would have to make. There'd have to be some changes that have to make, for sure. In terms of how cloning would work. Now, I could definitely see cloning still, them just kind of retconning the whole, you get diseases from the clones were more susceptible to diseases to clones are unstable. And the more you clone, the more unstable the clone will become. And eventually you just won't be able to clone anymore, to get the clone anymore, because it just won't take. The big thing is consciousness, because they said specifically in the lore that you cannot copy a consciousness onto a body. They haven't figured that technology out. So they'll have to go back and change that. Now, I don't think it's too much of a retcon, because AI does exist in Star Citizen. You have to understand that AI has existed in Star Citizen for hundreds of years. It's just every time the AI is developed, it goes crazy and kills everybody. So it's a matter of getting it right. So my theory and my suggestion for changing it is, like I said earlier, just make it so that cloning becomes unstable, so it's not reliable. And two, people have, the altered carbon route. You have a data device somewhere in your body that you can use to download your memories and your consciousness into a new body. Now, the problem being is that if that data device is damaged or destroyed, you're dead. So that would keep things like war would still be scary, because in war, it's not always possible to retrieve someone's body. It's quite common all over, in history, that bodies are never returned or disappear, or bodies are so badly damaged that they're unrecognizable. It could still happen. By way of the corporate in Disney, yeah. Yeah, thank you, Micker, I know. I do like spaceships. How did you know that, Dash? There's no coming back. Exactly. So there is some... you could definitely still add that to it. And there probably is going to be a little bit... no, Execute, you didn't send me into a rant. You sent me into something I was going to talk about anyways. So I wanted to kind of talk about this anyways. There is some questions that still bring up about like lore and gameplay, and my personal preference, and this is probably going to send a lot of gameplay or lore purists going, oh, shock, which is, it doesn't matter. Like, hand wave that shit. But then again, like, the original concept is fine. Just hand wave that shit. I don't know why I have to bring in cloning when the original concept was fine. Because the original concept was your body is preserved, or you're preserved, and then really good, like, medical technology can bring you back from the brink of death. And it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And you'd hand wave it a little bit where, what if I just destroy the body? If I'm a total dick. It's like, they'll still wake up because somebody found the body later on. It just, maybe it hurts their lifespan a little. Oh, excuse me, a little more. That kind of thing. Well, that's the thing, TG. It could be easily that this is easy to hand wave too, which is brain patterns aren't the same. So a brain pattern needs to match the body. We already know that limbs and or organs can reject the body because of biochemistry. Everyone's biochemistry is unique, which is our DNA is unique, all that other kind of stuff as well. So that's an easy hand wave. It just doesn't matter. And it's a science fiction trope, which is the brain patterns are off and things kind of mess up. They haven't done the change. They haven't changed the actual document to say cloning it. No, it was just mentioned in there in the live. So, hey, Alex, let's go, man. You were just mostly dead. Exactly. That's an easy kind of get away from. Get Out is a different type of film. It is more of a horror film than a sci-fi film. Though it does have sci-fi roots. And another thing is, like, I know, like, a lot of the questions is, do they just have clones waiting for you to come out? And it's like, no, they wouldn't. They probably have some sort of flash cloning technology where they just need a piece of tissue to regrow you fairly quickly. It's not too much out of hand, you know, and it can easily be explained away for gameplay purposes. That really doesn't matter. Like, I don't know why they went so hardcore into this. The lore explanation before made sense. Maybe there's some specific things they want to do. Like, I've mentioned the idea of respawn sickness in the past, where you come back to life, you've got to recuperate. That may be where they get the idea for clones, where the idea is that you're in a new body and you have to kind of get used to it. And but yeah, like, the lore isn't like completely against it. A lot of this technology exists, so. There we go. Sorry, I was talking with somebody. Thank you for the gift sub there, Alex. Wasn't that the specific concept prior to us getting bodies and planets? Not bodies, but definitely planets. Bodies were going to be existing before. You were never going to be locked to your cockpit. That was part of the core element of Star Citizen. It's another thing that a lot of people say. It's like, FPS wasn't a part of the original pitch of Star Citizen. Yes, it was, guys. FPS was part of the original pitch of Star Citizen. The big key was that they wanted to expand FPS beyond just a couple of levels in a stations. They wanted to have land-based FPS missions, which was what the expanded FPS was in terms of the kicks things. So, but yeah, it was definitely before we had full planets. I mean, it was like the cloning lab got your puck, and you need a month to grow a new clone body to implant into it. Again, just speculation. They're not going to make you wait a month, even a gameplay month, to come back. It's going to be more. Yeah, they got your stack, they got your puck, they got your chip, and they're regrowing you, but you know, and they can come you back. You can go back almost instantaneously. Because again, hand waving. But it's going to take you a while for rehab. And that rehab is 20, 30 minutes. So you'll be at a disadvantage for 20, 30 minutes, so that you have to, you can't just rush back into a fighter and go fight something. We're talking about cloning. Theory crafting, a little bit about cloning. How's it going, Phantom? This is another thing. Lore needs to service the gameplay, not vice versa. The lore is important, but the lore needs to service the gameplay. And let me put it this way. There are some interesting concepts for this. Like TG Gelta said, what's stopping you from your brain being downloaded into somebody else's body? Maybe that's a thing. Maybe that's a mission chain you got to do. Someone is trying to evade the cops and they've downloaded themselves into another body. Now you got to find who this person is because they look different. Or someone's making clones of themselves to make a clone army to go fight people. That's a good comedy mission right there. A good riff on Attack of the Clones, you know? A bounty hunter is cloning himself to try to take down more bounties to make more money. Gary from Fallout, yeah. You could do both, Trouble. There's no problems with both. There we go. Someone's trying to clone the Mezzers. trying to bring back the measures. And I will say this. It's very likely that this is an advancement that happened post-Measure, because as I described before, the Measure regime was kind of a flat situation in technology. A lot of people it's like, why does it seem like technology stopped? And I think the answer is because it probably did. In some ways, the Measures aren't asking for innovations. The Measures want weapons. Now they're obsessed with architecture and with order and social science. And we actually kind of have references to that. The Chinese dynasties fell into this trap of social sciences where they they rested on their laurels in terms of advancement. And that caused them to, many historians and many sociologists, especially Chinese sociologists, think that made them weak, that made them open to attack, which is why they would fall to the Mongols. Because even though the Mongols are a quote unquote technologically inferior, civilization compared to the Chinese, didn't stop them from capturing a bunch of Chinese engineers and forcing them to make siege engines. I played that level of Age of Empires. So it could be something like that. The Measures were only focused on guns and social technology and social science, so they stopped paying attention to actual science, medical science, science research, and research and technology, and just began to try to make a better gun rather than make a new gun. And once the Measures were gone, a lot of these scientists who weren't afraid of dying in a death camp or being disappeared, started to be able to work more freely and ask more questions that may not be able to have been done under the Measures, and now we suddenly have respawn technology. Theaters of War is a game. It's a game inside the game. Theaters of War is a in-game video game. See, as you mentioned, if body parts get too injured, they'll need cybernetic implants. So that's only cosmetic, or there'll be advantages. Probably just cosmetic. We don't know. One of the things they did say was like your body will get injured and you respawn, or when you get a new clone, that the injury will pass to your clone. It's like that doesn't work like that in scientific ways. I guess it could work in Star Citizen if you just want to hand wave it, but I think the better way of looking at it is. You could also say some sort of Star Trek mumbo jumbo, like biokinetic feedback, missing limb, phantom limb syndrome, where you saw your arm get blown off and now your arm is here, so your body rejects it growing that arm again, and so you have to get a cybernetic arm or something like that. Whatever. But I mean, there's definitely could be some say like, oh well, it actually makes it a little bit easier for CIG because you don't necessarily have to track where the damage was on the arm. You can just say, hey, you've got a cybernetic leg now. It's like, oh, but my arm got shot off. It's like, okay, cool. You're a new clone, dude. You're in a new body. Congratulations. It's just your leg's DNA kind of got fucked, and we had to cut it off because it grew a tiny little leg. It grew a tiny little Deadpool leg. So we had to cut that off and put a cybernetic limb on it because it's cheaper than growing it fresh. Give me back my tiny little Deadpool leg. I know, Dallas. I had several friends growing up with who didn't have developed hands. They had very small, tiny little hands that are about the same size, maybe a little bit bigger than a baby's hands, with like 2 or 3 fingers on them. They had to wear hooks that were fitted so that they could pick up things with a hook. So it is a genetic like abnormality that exists in reality. Club foot, different facial features and that kind of stuff. Probably old man, but I don't think that would be the case. Wouldn't be that widespread. But it could work. I think it's more likely that it's going to be limited to citizens, which is why you have it, but, you know. One leg longer than the other, that's common as well. Can you talk about how the first form of the UE formed? Like, how they got under one roof? The UNE, the United Nations of Earth, is complicated, but the best way of describing it is humanity was expanding all over the solar system. So different planets were probably, this is not 100% confirmed, were probably their own countries. So Mars may be its own country, if not multiple countries existing on Mars. We know that, like, Ganymede was its own country. Some of them may have been under some other jurisdictions with other countries, like the United States may still have control of other parts of it, but it wasn't the United States. I think it was like the North American Alliance or something like that. Like, there's a couple of super countries that existed under before the UNE formed. So, like, you had like the EU essentially, but copy pasted across the country, across the world. And then RSI discovered the first jump point, what's his name? I've always seen him as Australian. Nick Croshaw. Nick Croshaw discovered the first jump point. The reason why I always seen him as Australian, because he shares the same last name as Yahtzee. The actual, like, guy who is Yahtzee, his last name is Croshaw. Same spelling and everything, which I always assumed was a nod towards him. Do you have some systems owned by RSI? No, you don't. But he discovered the first jump point, and then humanity started to expand. It wasn't like they found more jump points before Nick Croshaw died. Multiple jump points were found before the end of Nick Croshaw's life. So by the time Nick Croshaw was an old man and died, there were multiple jump points in multiple systems. And it started to get a little confusing because you have systems all over. These various systems which are being controlled. A good example of this is Centauri. Centauri is one of the first colonies that humans settled down in this time period. It was discovered by, I believe, an American survey team and given to a Japanese-based terraforming corporation who terraformed the planet. So the question is it just because it's discovered by an Americans, is it under American jurisdiction? Because the American company sold the rights to the system to a Japanese terraforming company, does that mean that the Japanese have jurisdiction over Centauri? If the company owns it, are they under the because it's a multinational corporation, are they technically under all of those different jurisdictions? Who has jurisdiction over Centauri, over Sai? Can they have their own government? Things are getting confusing. Diplomatically, politically, because, you know, all you need is some idiot shooting another one, and now suddenly you have an interstellar incident with all of different human governments pointing guns at each other. On top of that, it's getting fucking expensive. Like by that point, humanity is pushing all over the place. New jump points are being found all the time, and it's stretching the resources of humanity. So you're getting a politically divided species. And you're getting a very socially divided species and an economically strained governments. So they came up with the idea of forming the UNE as a means to solve those problems. It wasn't necessarily popular, and from the lore, it took a while. It took at least a couple of years to get some of the major players on board. And it could have taken longer. There are references in the A Gift for Baba of wars, of like the unification wars, which could have been fought between the UNE and other human nations. Maybe, you know, between the UNE and Mars, or the UNE and Croshaw, where they had to. There might have been conflicts, if not full blown wars. between the various human nations in order to bring them under one banner. The first jump point? No. Hey, Sushi. I did see the space crab in the background of the latest sprint report. Oh, you subscribed. The Doot. Thank you so much for that 30 months there, Firefly. It's Captain. It's this. I don't do the celebrations for this. Sorry there, Firefly. 30 months. Thank you so much, my man. Oh, also, this Saturday, we're not going to be starting early for Saturday because we're doing episode 0 of the Stompy. Let me... Thank you for subscribing there. Let me pull up this as well. I think I have it downloaded. I may not. So Darj and I have been working back and forth on this. This is going to be a little sneak preview for you guys. So if you guys watch this, I'm going to reveal it for full on episode 1, where you see it in episode 0. But nope, that's Infinite Mies. Ta-da! Grey Topaz. So this is the layout we're doing. So, if you guys are interested in stompy, fighty robots and tabletop RPGs, join us November 14th for the first episode of Grey Topaz, which is our mecha-inspired TTRPG using the Stars Without Number system. So, yeah, episode 0. When I do episode 0s, I do them not live because not everyone knows the system, and it's a lot of like getting to know. It'll be posted on our on the YouTube of Stars Without Number. But Space Crab Ragoon. CG mentioned recently that they're working on an in-game arcade machines to work. Will we have to pay AUC to play them? Probably. Maybe like 1 or 2 credits. You think that clone farms or factories will be a thing? No, probably not, Jack. You're not going to have blank clones because clones aren't generic copies of people. They're specific genetic copies. There may be factories that create clones, like cloning machines that work, but I don't think you're going to have racks on racks on racks of clones being stored in cold storage. I think they're going to be grown to specific need, because that, as I've been saying before, cryogenic storage has its limits and it can damage the body. It's one of the reasons why they don't use cryogenic storage for long-term. It's like, why not just cryogenically store prisoners forever? It's like, this is probably damage to their bodies. They can probably work for short-term, but after a certain time. Hey, Goversource. You don't have the time. There'll probably be some sort of system set up to take DNA sample and then clone somebody from it. That could be a thing. Data running DNA samples, having sort of a DNA sample tray. I think mechanically speaking, what you might have is you go to a planet, you land on the planet, you go to a local to the medical facility, and you press a button, and your hand goes into like a little sample device. Hey, look, I'm invincible. A little sample device, and then they like take a sample of your blood and you pop it back out. I mean, most DNA swabs are done with like cheek swabs now, but May your redeemers explode for no reason, and everyone hates you. Midichlorian extraction, exactly. Out in Parador is all into synth world and AI, yeah? What exactly is the deal with synth world other than it's expensive? Face value, I'm terrified. It sounds like we're building a homeworld for the other side of our inevitable Terminator war. So the problem with terraforming and finding, first off, is you need to have a planet that's far enough away from a star to be habitable. So it has to be in the green zone. Secondly, it has to have the right biochemical mixture and the right resources on it for it to be worthwhile of terraforming. Third of all, if it has the right biochemical signatures similar to human life, it probably already has life on it, at least even some type of small life. And if that's the case, by terraforming it, you're committing genocide on the future species of that planet. A literal genocide occurred at the end of the Mesoregime, which caused the overthrow of the Mesoregime. It was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, but it was a big freaking straw when they broadcasted that the Mesers gleefully murdered an entire sentient species so they could have a better planet. So they could terraform a planet. They watched them suffocate to death as their atmosphere was being changed around them. Like some sick, twisted stuff. So that caused what's called the Fair Chance Act. So because of the Fair Chance Act, it limits the amount of planets that humans have available to them. Because of this limitations, it becomes very difficult for humanity to expand every time it finds a new system. As a result, Synth World was created as an idea of, can we build our own planet? If we can build our own planet, then we don't need to inhabit other planets. We can just build them from scratch. The problem with Synth World is that we haven't learned how to build on that scale yet. We're not talking about like a O'Neill cylinder. We're not talking about a Dyson sphere. We're talking about somewhere between an O'Neill cylinder and a Dyson sphere. We're talking about the shield worlds from Halo. Massive planet shells of a planet that you can probably live on every level of the planet. But how do you do that with gravity? Do you produce your own gravity? Do you have massive gravity generators that can produce the gravity? Do you do it with mass? That's a lot of mass. Do you have to just break up dead rocks in order to do it? How much resources does it need? So the Synth World has been going on for about 100 years, about a generation to try to figure this stuff out. And it's essentially a giant R&D project with a big payoff at the end. So... Bruh. Yeah. Maximum time stuck in cryo, then minimum time needed to recover thawing, then right back to the freezer. Ouch, Kyo. Ouch. I don't know if next year's gonna be huge for features. I think we'll get a lot of little details in. And if they do the, especially if they get the what's it called? iCache. If they can get iCache in when they think they are. Spoiler warning, they won't. I'm not trying to shit on CIG. I'm not trying to say they're lazy or it's not going to happen. CIG has a track record, and that track record is not good. SE has gravity plates already. It'd be interesting to see how Synthworld is set up. And that's the thing. It's like CIG already, SE already has gravity plates. If you use spin gravity, that's a lot of energy to get that thing started to spin, and you need to keep it spinning. As well as, maybe you don't because you need to have multiple levels. If you can create basically an artificial space station the size of a planet, you could, in theory, have every single level of that planet be its own habitation sphere. That's a huge amount of space to build. And it triples or quadruples the amount of space that you actually have on a planet, which is very efficient. So you could have a situation where the outer layer is just metal, and then the inner layer is habitation or maybe docks, and then the layer underneath that is like commercial space, and then habitation towards the center, maybe government at the very, very center of it. So it leaves it open to very interesting things. Yeah, it's essentially a prototype for how do you build planets. And if they can get Synth World to work, then they know it's almost an allegory for Star Citizen. They're working on the tools to be able to build a planet, but they're building a planet and developing the tools at the same time. So the question becomes, will it ever work? Star Citizen. Will it ever work together? Yeah, all of the graphics they've used is not a ring. It's not like a tube like you'd see with an O'Neill cylinder. It's a planet. Big round metal planet. That may be also what Synth World is. They may be taking like a larger proto-planet that's dead, pulling it into a green zone, and then building structures around it, using that as the core of the planet. Who knows? Maybe finding a really dense asteroid and doing that. They haven't really talked about what it is because, as with all lore, they don't want to go into the weeds about the details of what something is until they actually have it in game, because then it becomes, you don't have the discrepancies of this is what it says in lore, but in reality it looks like that, you know. How many more taxes? We don't know, but I guarantee you we're going to be paying more taxes. Basically, they're making Cybertron. Yeah. I mean, personally, I'd be happy if it was a giant O'Neill cylinder, because that'd be cool as fuck. For those guys who don't know what an O'Neill cylinder is, have you seen the space colonies from Gundam? Have you seen Babylon 5? Both of those are O'Neill cylinders. Have you seen the Navoo and the Behemoth in Expanse? You know, spin the drum. That's an O'Neill cylinder. Same thing. Sidonia as well, yeah. Yeah, it's a matter of scale. My Odyssey G9 computer monitor for EVE Online was able to play full screen, but for Star Citizen, it's only showing half of the screen. There is some scaling issues. If it's like a 4K or a huge monitor, or if it's one of those big wraparound monitors, there are some scaling issues that happen. I think there's some guides into how to get it working properly. You have to have the right settings input for it. Maybe. I still think that the my theory is that the Krthak are artificial, but some new information. I actually want to talk about this real quickly. Citizen Xi'an. So, the Xi'an lives on a homeworld called Rijian. Okay? So the Rijian homeworld was a lush tropical homeworld where they were not always at the top of the food chain. They abandoned their homeworld after it was rendered uninhabitable at the climax of the Civil War called the Great Divide, which was a series of military engagements which the both sides of with which all of the great houses of the Xi'an Empire fought one another for control. And the end, the thing that caused them to eventually abandon it, was they had destroyed their home world because of their own belligerence, their own warlike nature. And so they had to form the Xi'an Empire in order to organize enough to escape their home world. So really, they nuked their own planet to death. And it's one of the reasons why Xi'an are entirely reliant on, are very hesitant for combat, for conflict, because whenever it happens in Xi'an history, millions die. That happened in 20,044 BCE. So about 19,000 years before humanity even decided it was going to. Oh no, about 15,000 years before humanity got into the Stone Age. So that's something I was interested in. Sings along across the Great Divide. Oh yeah, we are gonna be talking about the belligerent duck, but I don't know why I brought that up, but oh, because of my thought was originally that the Kurthok were the ones who destroyed their planet. It still could be the fact that the Kurthok were the ones who destroyed their planet. But we don't know. My running theory is still that the Xi'an built the Kurthok, and that there are synthetic species that the Xi'an built, and they turned on them. And that would be very fitting. It's very Battlestar, and the idea that humans were fighting, or humans, the species was fighting amongst each other, and then one side builds a death robot to defeat their foes, and it turns on its creators, and then turns on all Xi'an, and they're like, oh shit, we out. Oh yeah, another incident where AI go crazy, try to kill people. Yep, it's gonna happen. It looks like CIG is working on their tech debt. Their tech debt really isn't that bad, guys. Like, their tech debt is mostly in ships, not in content. In order to have tech debt, you have to have tech. And a lot of what the tech is in the game right now is essentially placeholder practice while they're working on other things. Yeah, it's the Geth. Doctor Who Daleks. I don't know too much about Doctor Who's lore to know what the Daleks are. Oh, someone said the Quarian and the Geth. Kind of. Like, I could see them be robotic workers too, but server meshing, yeah. The elevator buttons are tech debt. But like missions aren't tech debt, because the missions we have right now are all placeholders. The mission system that they're developing uses the same tools as we currently have, but it uses things like, for instance, the new building blocks UI and that kind of thing. But the big thing about the missions is that the back end of the missions is what matters, because those are supposed to be run by the Quanta system. So, that kind of thing. Yeah, Quanta has to be tied into it. So, essentially, any tools they build now, there's no point in building more until they know what the quantum system looks like. Yeah, I know Daleks are squid Nazis. I don't know what their lore is how they became squid Nazis. Yeah, the HUD is a good example of tech debt in the sense that, well, no, HUD is an example of not tech debt because it's not really tech debt in the sense that they're rebuilding the UI from scratch. Okay, thank you, Jaden. Yeah, exactly. Ship tech deck is the big one because it's the doors, it's lights, it's the power systems, it's the systems themselves, it's the damage system. It's those sorts of things. That's what the thing with the ships, because the ships are already built to function in game. Now they've got a bunch of shit they got to add on to them, which they weren't originally planned for. So now they have to go back and essentially redesign the ships from scratch to make sure they work, which is what they've done in the past, so that ships would be able to function with the piping systems. But now they have to put those piping systems in. They have to, make sure that all the ships have a physical placement of equipment, what equipment there is, where does that equipment go, that kind of thing. So. Tangent from the Geth androids, yeah. Yeah, the HUD tech that is starting now because they're finalizing the HUD, so anything that they want to make is going to be outdated eventually. So if they want to update it, they have to go back and rework it. Essentially, what tech debt is, it's one of those things that a lot of people misunderstand. Tech debt is not I have to make something; it's I have made something and now I have to update it because I made a quick and dirty fix for this thing, and I'll get back to it and fix it eventually. But usually with tech debt, you never do because that quick and dirty fix works until it doesn't, and then you have to go back and fix it. But you have time to do that to undo that band-aid. So, for instance, a lot of what's going on in the background of the engine development for Star Citizen is tech debt manifestations, going back and fixing issues that old designers back in original Crytek days were doing. They have to go back and fix it. So, for instance, the 64-bit floating point precision, that was fixing tech debt. That was dealing with tech issues. How server meshing works, that's dealing with tech debt because the server itself, the system itself, is not designed for that. So they have to go back and redesign the system in the server in the engine itself to make it work. So a lot of what CIG's problems is tech debt because the engine's not built to do what it's designed, or it's not designed to do what they want it to do. And that gets into the question about, well, should they have built the engine from scratch? And that's a little bit of hindsight's 2020. They probably should have, but they didn't know they were going to get $400 million 8 years later. They thought they were going to get $500,000 in a Kickstarter and then get a couple of million from private investors and then launch a Freelancer 2. It's a very different scope compared to the original Kickstarter idea. Then when they got all this money is when the scope started to increase from the very beginning. It was started right after the Kickstarter had launched. We'd be 2 years farther behind if they were their own engine, so many more devs to hire for that. I think we probably would have been ahead if they had been started with their own engine. But I also don't think they would be nearly as successful if they had done that. Hindsight, it's always 2020. Yeah, and they lucked out with Crytek. They lucked out big with Crytek. Because Crytek stopped paying its employees, and so people need to eat, and so CIG is like, we got money, let's open up a studio in Frankfurt, I gotta make sure I can't do that anymore. The new green wall is a little different from the regular green screen. Because if I do this, hey, what's up? I guess I could do this. So this is the wall. It has lighting on it. I think it just needs, it has pretty good lighting too. The issue is more like depth. Because if I, like, say, turn this off, you still have a bit of that issues. Turn this back on. A lot of that flicker goes away. Yeah, it's not true green. You blame Pico? It's good enough for the purposes. You won't be able to really notice it. There are ways that I can do to, there are things I could do to make it more perfect. More even lighting on it if I wanted to. The green isn't perfect, but it doesn't need to be. Yeah, it makes sense. Let's do some more beers because I haven't done that yet. I should probably change that as well. Change up the community stuff here. Thank you guys for coming in and hanging out, by the way. Means lots of you guys do come in and hang out with us. Now let's go back and do the actual. I'm gonna check Patreon real quick. Oh, it was Old Man Zim who asked, is there any lore on cloning? Which was appropriate because we already answered all the questions on cloning. So yes, I already answered that. That's awesome. By the way, you guys, if you guys want to know, I have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/Galactic Historian. And there you can support me if you want to help me make more Galactic Historian videos. I put your name on the list. I kind of do a Q&A session, essentially that where, like, when we do this, you get, as a Patreon backer, you actually get priority questions. You can ask a question on a thread and get that answered quicker than you would if you were to ask me directly. You know, I'll make sure to answer those questions faster. I'm also going to be doing more specific FAQ kind of monthly things where I do a deep dive on something that's kind of small, nothing that's like major. But it's major enough. Let me see if I can't do this better. Sorry, this is bothering me. Nah.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
There you go. That's fine. I do need a link below the screen. I just haven't really bothered doing it just because I have it on YouTube. That's where I get most of my Galactic Historian stuff. So, but yeah, I'll be doing more FAQ videos, and I'll be taking that based off of your guys' questions. So, like, for instance, a good example of this would be cloning. You know, like, what is the cloning tech in Star Citizen? I wouldn't necessarily do a full deep dive on that because there's really not enough information on it. Questions on like specific corporations or specific events where I could do a little quick, hey, this is the short answer for that answer. Like, who are the UEE Marines? Like, oh, here's a little short bit before I do a full long video. There's more than one question in there? Oh, okay. 2 minutes ago. Thank you, Diablos. Diablos asked, is there any information on weaponized spider mines? That's a good question. No, not as far as I know. Spider miners are gray cat technology, and I can assume you can use them as weapons. They have giant mining lasers attached to them, so yeah. But I don't think they're necessarily commonly weaponized, because they're essentially like, it would kind of like be like using a giant drill in combat. You know, like those drilling machines that they do, that kind of like those wall crawlers that like crawl along the walls of a tunnel as they're digging them, you know, very slowly. That's kind of what a spider miner is. It's more like a heavy duty version of a more mobile but heavy duty version of like an Orion. This is some Star Trek special effects, yes. I hadn't read that, but I did now. So, Paul, how are you holding up with all of this? Oh, gosh. I'm doing all right. See, I will say I have one thing over most people who are dealing with U.S. elections, is that I'm a history teacher and a government teacher. So I knew this was going to happen, not like directly knew, but I knew this was a possibility beforehand. And I am anticipating it it's gonna take a lot longer than you guys think. So buckle in, because nothing's final till December 15th. So hope you like this, but for the next month. I know it's a lie. Have a good night there, Vila. PTU? I haven't gotten to the PTU yet, no. But we might go there towards the end. You're addicted to the sub visuals. Thank you for giving me that sub there, Extreme Tuber. I mean, I could show you the sub visuals. I'll do some minor dancing to this music. It's not quite done because I haven't properly green screened everything, but it looks kind of trippy now. It wasn't necessarily a disaster. It was more that they couldn't count it early. Mail-in ballots work all over the country. They work all over the country, especially in places like Arizona, California, Washington. They're all very used to mail-in ballots. I actually used mail-in ballots when I was in college for California, because I lived in Tennessee, and my ballot I was registered to vote in California because that's where my home was. So for the time I was at school in Tennessee, I'd get a mail-in ballot, and then I'd fill out my ballot and I'd mail it back in. No spider miners to crack alien capital ships. Not at least intended to crack alien capital ships. No, of course not. But it's not like mail-in ballots are new. Mail-in ballots exist all over the country. It's just not in the volume. The biggest issue is more that places like Philadelphia, they refuse to allow them to count earlier, like they would have normally. Same with Georgia. There were some other issues as well. Washington only has mail-in ballots. That's a good example. Thank you for that sub there, Max. You rock, my man. And Oregon, yeah. And automatic registration. Yeah, I'm not going to get too heavily into politics with that. It's just as a teacher who teaches government, and as someone who's experienced it, it's not too complicated. It's just there's a lot of other factors that are at play that people are either willfully ignorant about or just don't know. Same answer, 2 hours? Yes. When will the Nevada results come in? 2 hours. Jaded, it actually works, and that's actually how elections work in most U.S. states. It's just some are very much more sticky. Like you can't do that in Texas, but you could do that in California, Arizona, Nevada, Utah. Most of the northeastern states, you have that same thing. As long as you have a utility bill and a driver's license, you can register to vote almost on the spot. Either automatic registration or immediate registration, or you can get a provisional ballot. Funny story, something that is more Star Citizen related, that I've got a little bit of a bone to pick with CIG, is that the Imperator election was supposed to be a ranked choice voting. And for those guys who don't know how ranked choice voting works, you have a series of choices that you choose. So you choose, this is my primary candidate, this is my secondary candidate, all the way down to however many candidates there are. So if there's 6 candidates, you choose your choices of 1 to 6. Then they count all the ballots, and then they say, okay, well, these people lost. You know, you have a certain number of like the top 2 candidates or the top number of candidates win and the other one lose. So this last round of voting should have been count all the ones. Okay, so Leilani Addison won 44% of the vote. Great. Now let's see who's the next top one is, which I think it was either Mirnago or Costigan. And you say, okay, how many of those people's second choice was Leilani? How many of them was Costigan? Okay, so then you move those votes over into those brackets and you go, okay, who's left? You know, who wins? That's the way ranked choice voting is supposed to work, is it's basically you choose your choice of which one's number 1 through number 5. And then you slowly whittle it down over every counting cycle. But they didn't allow us to do ranked choice voting for the Imperator, which is shame on you, CIG. Shame on you. Yeah, Maine does the system. That's, for instance, how all of so like in the Imperator elections, everyone can vote. Lord Buckethead can be, which they actually have a version. There was like a version of Lord Buckethead that was running for Imperator that they can run every 10 years. Anyone who has enough popularity can win. Then they get down to the first 10 candidates. They basically take the vote of all of them. You make your ranked choice of them, the ones you want, out of thousands, And then that it breaks it down to the 10, and that 10 then turns into the final 5 based off of ranked choice voting. Once you voted for that first round, then you did the second round, then you get the third round. Yeah, and the top 10 get on the ballot. Yeah, it was that's how they did ranked choice voting. But I assumed that they were going to do the same thing with the last round. That the last round, they take the last 5 and they do a ranked choice system for the last 5. But I may have been wrong. But I assumed that that's what they were going to do as well. Do I think microwaves? I would love for them to explode. Make it on the ballot, it might be a little victory in itself for a candidate. Yeah. I think microwaves, if your microwave caught on fire, I don't know what you did to caught on fire, but I would assume that they could do some damage to you, yes. I assume any kitchen appliance can probably explode on you in Star Citizen. Component malfunction, yeah. It'll probably be a generic electric discharge, but... What kind of powers does the Imperator have? Is it Republic, Senate types deal? It's a federated republic. So it's a federal republic is what the UEE is. So most of the planets are entirely independent of one another, and they have a lot of jurisdiction on their own laws. Most of the laws are enforced by local police forces rather than by federal police forces. But there is a federal government which has sovereignty over all of them, which is the UEE. So the federal government of the UEE is run by a triumvirate system, with at the very top is the Imperator. Now, the triumvirate system essentially means there are 3 branches of government which are wholly separate from one another. They don't have checks and balances on one another. They have entire different powers from one another. So, for instance, the advocacy is similar to the United States judiciary system, the judiciary branch, judicial branch, but it also includes the FBI. So it would be like taking the police forces of federal police forces like the Marshals, the FBI, the CIA, all of those forces. I don't know if the CIA, because I don't know if it's in DOD or not, but they would be their own branch. So policing and law enforcement, as well as law interpretation, is all one branch. And then you have which is called the advocacy. Then you have the military. And the military is, at least it used to be run by what's called the High General. Now it's run by the High Command, and it's its own branch. It runs as its own branch of government. So all of the military answers to the High Command. The High Command is the top generals or admirals in the entire UEE. They are essentially the Joint Chiefs. They work like the Joint Chiefs, but they are not answerable to the Senate or to the judiciary. They're a separate branch. Then you have the Senate, or the Congress, the legislative branch. The legislative branch is in charge of everything else. And they have a lot of the executive powers that you have in the United States. So like the Congress and Senate is in charge of things like maintaining spaceways and infrastructure and spending and tax collection and all these other things. They're in charge of all of that. Now, the way that the UEE's power structure works is that the Imperator actually technically sits on top of all of them, because that was the thing that was created in order to for the measures to take power. So while the Imperator technically has final say on all the 3 branches, the Imperator does not have control of those 3 branches. You can think of the Imperator as having the right of final veto, but that's it. Technically, they're the head of the military, because they're actually the High General position elevated to a higher position. But even then, they still have to work through the High Command. They cannot, as far as I know, issue orders to the High Command to do things for them. The High Command still has control over the military directly. They're not answerable to the Imperator. The Imperator is simply there as a "you can't do this" rather than "you must do this." The Senate tried to defund the military, and it failed because the military is a separate branch and they have their own bureaucracy, they were able to put up a lot of major roadblocks to slow down the defunding process. Because there's really no accountability to the military because they're their own independent branch. Is the CIA off state? Yeah, I think it might be the state, part of the State Department. Because I think they might be technically the State Department in the United States. Which would mean that the CIA would probably be, the equivalent of the CIA would probably be under control of the Senate. You got Stanton Law questions? Hit him. Hit him to me there, Diablos. Will Rudo now rock Addison as a face over Costigan? I'd really hope so. I really hope so. Question, do the Advocacy eat donuts? Is it some other fattening foods? The Advocacy is kind of weird. The Advocacy is, they're cops, but their cops meet the FBI. It's kind of like if you took the ATF, the NSA, the Marshal Service, the FBI, the ATF, or I said the ATF, Border Patrol, for England, like MI5, all of these different agencies, which are kind of internal security services, and mush them together into one group. So there are advocacy officers and there are advocacy agents. So your average advocacy officer would work kind of like a marshal or like a typical kind of somebody who's a boots on the ground kind of cop, but at a federal level. Whereas an agent is like a special agent in the FBI, somebody who is really, really good at their job. So the average advocacy officer might be maybe a military veteran, probably like a recent veteran, but advocacy agents are like ex-Marines, like ex-Special Forces. They are the equivalent of, if you think about Mass Effect, they're the specters of the Star Citizen universe. They are above the law in many cases. They're Judge Dredd meets Commander Shepard meets wild the Earp brothers, from Wild West, not like the actual Earp brothers, but like the mythical Earp brothers from the Wild West. They're myths, legends, and have a lot of authority to do what they want, including chase criminals through international borders. Kind of like a field agent, yeah. So they eat fancy donuts, yes. Thank you, Little Spike. Are we misreading the Drake, or is it matching with its lore for durability? Drake's lore isn't necessarily durability in the sense of combat durability. It's the sense that it's easily replaceable. The systems that they use are rugged in the sense that you could lose parts of those systems and there are plenty of backup systems to keep it alive. But it has no safety features other than that. It's simple, it's easy to maintain, it's rugged enough that it can survive most harsh conditions, and it can still get you from point A to point B at half the cost. It's rugged and dependable, but cheap, I would back on the power management a little bit. Do you think they could need to down the shields and weapons when they don't use them to preserve energy, power plants and batteries? Likely they will. I don't imagine all of the systems being able to run at once in the final version of Star Citizen for all ships, unless you had a really good power plant. And even then, you're probably still maxing out your systems, which will probably put strain on them, cause them to do damage themselves, or to cause massive heat buildup. There's going to be some cost and some trade-off between powering all your weapons at once and all your defenses at once, and also, not overheating and dying and exploding. I think Drake will probably have some redundancies, but its redundancies will be over the critical systems, and that's it. So you wouldn't have redundant like power management to weapons or to shield management, but you would have it to like life support and maybe navigation, maybe the engines. So Drake is cheap. They cut corners where they need to, rather than making sure that, Starfleet, there's triple redundancies in every system. It's like, no, you need one. And that's it. And we're going to start to see that. Like, for instance, Crusader is like an upscaled version of Drake. They're rugged and dependable, but they're probably going to have a lot more safety features than Drake does. So as a result, you have this trade-off where you can pay for Crusader tech, and it's probably going to be cheaper because it's no frills. It's probably going to be cheaper than, say, Origin or Aegis or even Greycat or Shubin. Well, it's not Shubin. What is it? Argo. Or Misk. But it's not quite as bad as Drake. It still has a lot of the redundancies. Anvil has probably got a ton of redundancies to it, but you pay the premium for it. Same with Aegis. The differences between Anvil and Aegis is that Aegis emphasizes speed and maneuverability over firepower, where Anvil is the orc version of that. More DACA. Can we fit an entire armory on the side of this thing? Let's do it. It's similar to Drake. Drake sacrifices redundancy and safety for more DACA. Yeah, sure, one hit's going to knock out your gun, but if you hit them with 15 cannons, they're not going to be able to hit you back. Yeah, so like that wire system they showed off of the different relays and that kind of thing. Drake may only have one or two relays, versus an Anvil ship which might have two or three. Oh, yeah, Max, I agree. Like the whole Star Trek where you would have shields up, weapons armed, after the fact. You wouldn't have them up all the time. I think you'd have shields up all the time in Star Citizen, because shields are more than just, eventually, they'll be more than just against weapons, but also atmospheric. Like, they'll protect you from, radiation. And CIG has said time and again that radiation is going to be a huge issue for players. Heat and radiation. And if you're going onto a planet that has a lot of high heat or low or really it's very hot or very cold, those shields will also protect you from that a little bit. Environmental hazards, in general. But space radiation is the big one. There are planets that will probably have higher radiation in space, but space in general is very, very radioactive, so having shields will help you for that. Yeah, but with Drake, you're going to be able to pop that relay right out and pop a new one back in real quick. Exactly. The only other issue about Drake is that it could also be that relay doesn't exist inside the ship. That relay is an external facing relay that requires the shields to protect it from damage. So you'll have to go EVA to replace that relay. That's the thing. And that's probably the major difference between Drake and Crusader, is that Crusader would be internally facing relay, so you only have to get out of your seat and go pull that out, versus having to EVA and change it out. Now, larger Drake ships would probably have them internally, but like the Cutlass might have things externally. Same with the Herald. That's what they talked about in the past, is that a lot of the components for Drake might be on the exterior of the ship rather than interior. I don't know if it has escape pods. I don't know. There's nothing in the lore that indicates it has escape pods. There's an airlock. But yeah, it's also probably going to be a lot easier to find a Drake relay than it will be an Aegis relay. Drake relays will probably be everywhere because they're super cheap to make. Whereas Aegis relays, or relays that will function on the Aegis ships, are going to be a little bit more expensive. Not according to the lore. The lore, it's got an airlock. Now, the Belligerent Duck may have a customized airlock, but maybe a docking port. Look it up real quick. It looks like it might have an airlock. There's definitely something. Let me show you guys. Right here? I don't know what that is. It's not a gun because the gunner is back here. And then there's this right here, which I don't know what it is either. This is obviously the data core. And that's the cargo bay. Scanning room, maybe. It may have a docking port. It's a scanning station, so then what's this? It's the question. The layout definitely changed. Well, this is the official layout that last time I can see. This was released 2 years ago, so yeah, definitely it's probably changed. This is the art station post from Sarah McCullough. I can't say her name, but from the actual designer of it. You got fat, yeah. That's a question. Love watching you speculate solo. I'm basing the concept of having an airlock off of a lore piece that talks about someone being tossed in an airlock in a Mercury. It looks like they're... Oh, that's definitely scanning area. The images, the layout's changed. That side room you were talking about is a components area? Okay. You'd have to know where they are, friends. Kai Wolf. I'll just say this again, friends. Frensky says the thing I find interesting about most builders, except Drake, seem like they would place relays and such behind paneling. That might be hard to detect if console malfunctions. It would be if you don't do diagnostics. Here's the thing. Star Citizen is definitely going to be the kind of game where you have to run routine diagnostics on your systems to see what's working, what's not. So having an engineer sweep through your systems while you're traveling to go, oh, this thing has this relay is yellow rather than green. We need to replace that relay. Then go back, remove the panel, pull out the relay, replace it. Now it's not going to be every single panel in the every single ship is going to have like removable panels. It's just panels were removable at the relay stations. I don't think the MSR has a drone room because they don't have drones in the MSR. But a scanning suite, maybe. Oh, why is that still... We don't have it. We're not giving away a MSR. We're not giving away anything, guys. I just forgot to turn off the timer. My bad. I don't have enough money for 100 anyways. Not until the 15th, or until they pay me my my shill money. Yeah, you can link. You cheap bastard. Not subscribing. Just mess with you. Bouncer Bot's being generous with my money, yeah. I just forgot to turn it off from Sunday, so. That looks like an airlock. Unless that's the cockpit. We'll have to see when it comes out. Probably does need one. The 600i probably does need one, but it's going to get a rework anyway, so that makes sense for it to add in there. The layout's changed. Yeah. Hacking station like the Herald? Yeah, Sushi, it might be a hacking station. Definitely, it's definitely something that's not used for the typical stuff. Loken, thank you so much for that subscription. You demand a refund. You're not getting a refund. Stop paying me if you want a refund, Loken. Shots and cheers in chat, guys, for Loken. How you doing, buddy? Now, I will say I think it's starting this Sunday. I'm gonna make this announcement as well. This Sunday is my anniversary, so I'm not going to be streaming because it's my wife's and I's anniversary, 12 years together. But the 7 Days of Valor initiative, the thing that I've done a very long time ago, where we raise money for Stack Up, that starts on the 8th. Loken, Captain Richard, so many other Star Citizen streamers will be raising money. I'll be raising money for it on Monday, that Monday afterwards, and of course streaming on Thursdays like this, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So our goal is $50,000 as a team. We raised $30,000 last year, so my goal is to continue to increase that goal as much as possible. For the guys who don't know, we're raising money for Stack Up. Stack Up is an organization that helps active duty service personnel and veterans from NATO countries, from the United States, Europe, and then also in Canada, as well as in Australia and New Zealand. U.S. and its allies is their general term. But they have they send Xboxes, PlayStations, and that kind of stuff to overseas. They also give wounded vets who are like physically disabled, give them technology or controllers to help them so they can play video games again, help vets cope with PTSD and depression. They have an entire program called Stop, which is entirely free for anybody, let alone veterans, to come in. And if you're feeling like depression and stuff like that, they have counselors who will work with you. It is a fantastic program, and it's all done by gamers. It's run by veterans who are gamers. And they love games, they love to play video games, and they use it it started as the idea that video games can be seen as a form of therapy for many people, and they wanted to help veterans out because they're like them. I personally have a lot of friends who are veterans, and I worked with a lot of veterans in the past, and I've seen PTSD firsthand. It is not pretty. It is disturbing to see someone switch from being totally normal 1 minute to nearly busting down a door the next. Someone who's usually pretty calm and peaceful to just like going full ape shit mode on something because of a small stressor. It's scary to see it, and especially with loved ones, it's rough. And so this is these kind of organizations are designed to kind of help bridge that gap between civilians and veterans, to help them kind of adapt to society, as well as helping people who are really stressed overseas, find some escape, as well as helping people who are already injured, all those sorts of things. There's lots of good things that Stack Up does. So we'll be raising money for them again this year. Congratulations, Sirius. Thank you, Jaden. That poor woman. I know. She's put up with me for 12 years. So I normally be streaming on Sundays, but that is my anniversary, so I won't be doing that. $35? We started dating when she was 18. I'm 33. I was 21. Yeah, 12 years. It only lasted 7. Ouch. Now you're turning 35. Oh, nice. Congratulations. I know there's some big milestone with 35. I don't know what it is, but congratulations. You feel 55 after this year? It's been 85 years. 2020 has lasted a decade. I know. Sorry. It's all right, Jaden. Well, I wasn't able to show you guys the PTU, but I will show you guys the PTU tomorrow if I can. Kind of go around and talk a little bit more about the lore, because the IAE has some very interesting lore. But we will. So the plan is tomorrow is I saw Buster's nuts attempt at throwing 150 hot dogs in the back of a 135C. And it got me an idea. I'm going to throw the biggest booze cruise that Star Citizen has ever seen. I'm going to take an 890 out of probably Grimhex. And I'm going to get as many people as possible. And I'm just going to start grabbing beers and start dragging beers out to an 890 and tossing it into an 890. We're going to fill up an 890 with beers. See if we can do it. once we finish filling up the 890 with beers, if we have time and if the server isn't crashed, we're going to go bar hopping. We're going to go on a bar crawl, starting at Hurston, buying a drink at Hurston, and making our way all the way, hitting every station. Because I don't think all the stations have bartenders that work anymore. So hitting every working bar from Hurston to Microtech. Nice, Sirius. Nice. Oh, it's definitely a recipe for 30K, but I'm pushing the limits of it. If we can get, let's just say 200 beers. You know what? I'm going to go for broke. 242 beers. If we can get 242 beers on board an 890, I will be a happy pupper. Is anyone welcome? You're all welcome to try this madness. But Buster, Jake Acapella, and I always screw up his name. And Naz and I are going to try to do it together. So we're all going to stream it. We're all going to stream it. So it's going to be a big streamer party, but you're all welcome to come in and hang out, help us out. Well, if we don't take the ship off the pad, it'll be fine. Why would it be a problem if you take the ship off the pad? Oh yeah, but this ship doesn't stay around long enough is the problem. Diablos. It doesn't stay around because it'll despawn pretty quickly if you try to spawn it. Ah, yes, we'll throw them all in the pool. We'll throw all the beers in the pool. That's a perfect idea. Keep it cool, guys. We don't have a working refrigerator. We'll throw it in the pool. What we could do, idea, fill up a 135 with beer. Fill up multiple 135s with beer. And as they get pulled back in, they get pulled back in. And then once we have all of those 135s filled with beer, we spawn an 890, pull the 890 out, and then take the 135s into the hangar of the 890, and then distribute the beers from there. Exactly. That way we have the maximum ability of yeah, exactly. That way we have the maximum ability to have ships like that. The hard part is going to be once you take that ship out, it's done. So big brain moves. Big brain. Exactly. You could put two 135Cs inside a hangar. You could probably get three if you wiggle it long enough. Maybe Pisces. Pisces. A Pisces fighter. Pisces. Maybe a Pisces. Work smarter, not harder. Exactly. You just needed to save the state of the ship with the comm bug. I don't know what that is, but we'll talk about it tomorrow, Diablos. The rest of you guys, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us here tonight. If you did enjoy this, hit that follow button. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Let me know if you guys like this kind of thing. I like to do this so I can get my, hey, YouTube audience, I have a Twitch. Please join us for Twitch. Hey, Twitch audience, I have YouTube. Subscribe to me on YouTube. Please. We do kind of cross over a little bit there. On Twitch, we have 12,000 followers, which is awesome. And I'm trying to get 12,500 by the end of the year. I think it's possible. We're at 12,200. And on YouTube, I'm at 7,127. I'm going to be bold and try to get, well, yeah, let's say 8,000. I think that's doable. 8,000 subscribers on YouTube before the end of the year. I think I can do that. That means I have to get 900-ish, 875-ish subscribers between now and then. I can do it. I can think that can work. Anyways, guys, thank you for hanging out with us. Love your faces. I will see you guys tomorrow on Twitch. And if you guys are watching on YouTube, we will be doing a new YouTube video for the MSR, the big story, the story of the most famous MSR in existence, the belligerent duck. That will be going up. I'll be finishing. I've already recorded the audio for that. I just have to record the video, and that will be done and edit it. That'll be done probably by the weekend. We'll see. Thank you, guys. Love your faces. Like I say every night, hope to see you guys again soon. But if I don't, hope to see you someday in the black. And remember, ex Astoria, ad Astra.